Usually, the teams with multiple first round picks are the most interesting to watch because you would think, in theory, that they are the teams that are most well equipped to really come out of the gate strong and really end up smelling like roses at the end of the draft. And there's no question to me this year that the must watch team, if you were into the NFL draft, the must watch team, the most compelling and riveting team for you to watch this year in the 2014 NFL draft, beyond question, is going to be the St. Louis Rams. Part of the reason for that is not only do they have two first round picks, but whereas like the Cleveland Browns have picked 4 and picked 26, the St. Louis Rams have picked number 2 and picked number 13 in what is widely viewed as a very strong, very deep, very talented draft class. So the Rams could just sit there and really make out like bandits and gangbusters here for a team that has drafted well over the past few years by and large. And it helps when you have a good vision and really good direction and leadership coming out of your head coach and Jeff Fisher and your general manager with maybe the best hair in all of pro football and Wes Snead. Now, when you look at the recent history of the St. Louis Rams in the NFL draft, it suggests that this team is only going to get better, and with another really good draft here, could get a whole lot better in a hurry and could be a real force to be reckoned with in the NFC. And yes, I know they play in the toughest division in the National Football League in the NFC West with teams like Seattle and San Francisco, and yes, even Arizona. But the St. Louis Rams are coming, people. Who knows when it will be, but it's coming. It's coming. And part of the reason, again, is because of the recent draft history. And they've had a lot of hits in recent years. Robert Quinn, their first round pick in 2011, was an absolute beast and force in 2013. Now, I don't see any reason for that to change in 2014. Getting a guy in 2012 like Michael Brockers in the first round after you were sitting there and you were sitting at the number 2 pick and you end up being able to trade all the way down to, what was it, number 14 to go get him. Again, that's something, and it allowed you to accumulate even more picks on the top of the fact of what you had done by trading down from number 2 to number 6 in the RG3 trade. So it allowed you to get a Michael Brockers lower. It allowed you to get a Janoris Jenkins in round number 2. Again, those are the type of things that really good organizations do. And the St. Louis Rams, to me, in recent drafts have had a really good vision in terms of what they needed to do. And with that RG3 trade in particular, they set themselves up really well as an organization. And in terms of hits, again, they had some more in 2013. A guy like Alec Ogletree that they got late in the first round was a real impact player for them on the defensive side of the football. Another young, great athlete on the young, athletic defense. And then getting a running back like Zach Stacy out of Vanderbilt in the 5th round. Sometimes it's not just the first and second rounders that are your stars. Sometimes you got to hit on those guys late in the draft, the guys that fall through the cracks that fit what you want to do. And Zach Stacy from Vanderbilt is that Jeff Fisher type of running back and a great selection for them and a great steal where they got him in the draft. Now, the funny thing is, with the recent success of the St. Louis Rams in the draft, one area in particular they haven't been all that successful in is the second round. Now, yes, they got Janoris Jenkins in the second round in 2012, but some of their other second round picks, Lance Kendricks, he hasn't been all that good at all. He's been pretty much a bust. That's why they had to go give big money in free agency before last season to Jared Cook. Brian Quick has been a complete bust. A guy like Isaiah Pead, again, has been a big bust. Guys like Daryl Richardson, who were 7th round picks in 2012, and then eventually Zach Stacy, a 5th round pick in 2013, were given the shot this past season to be that featured ball carrier, not a guy like an Isaiah Pead. So even with all the success of the St. Louis Rams, both in terms of some of the selections they've made and some of the additional picks they've been able to accumulate that continue to put them year in and year out in a great position of power and in a position of being kingmakers in the NFL draft, they've had some bad misses in round number 2. And they still have some questions, I think, with Tavon Austin. It's not so much him. I question if the Rams organization fully understands how to deploy him, how to utilize him, and how to get the most out of him. You saw some flashes out of him. You saw some monster games out of him, but you also saw a lot of games where he did absolutely nothing. And you saw a lot of games where the St. Louis Rams just seemed to completely lack any creativity and any imagination in terms of how to figure out a way to get the ball into Tavon Austin's hands. Now, that's what makes him a question mark. To me, it's not his skill set. It's the organization and their mindset and their creativity or lack of creativity in figuring out ways to get the football in his hands and allow him to make the big plays that I knew he could coming out of West Virginia. Something, by the way, that you saw at times in 2013. See the Cowboys game, see the Colts game as two prominent examples. Now, again, for the St. Louis Rams, this 2014 draft, they still are in a tremendous position of power. And that still largely comes from the fact of what they accomplished with that RG3 trade in 2012. To be able to sit there and peel back from number 2 to number 6 to accumulate an additional second round pick for that year's draft and then 2 future first round picks. Then they traded again from 6 to 14, still got a guy that fit what Jeff Fisher wanted to do, got some additional picks from the Dallas Cowboys. Man, but it's really that RG3 trade that has been an organization maker for the St. Louis Rams. Now they're sitting here with picks number 2 and 13 in the first round, pick number 44 in the second round. So a team that's got a lot of young talent in a lot of places has the potential to get 3 real impact players in this draft with 3 of the first 44 picks. Now the ultimate question is going to be, though, for the St. Louis Rams, what's their draft strategy going to be? I kind of look at it and I say, it depends on how they view things. To me, their draft picks should still be currency. I know everybody is focused on the number 2 pick and the assumption that the St. Louis Rams are going to trade out of that pick. I assume at this point in time that they will. However, I also feel that it would be very wise for them to trade back out of 13, trade back as far as they possibly can to accumulate even more upper mid and mid round picks, or see if they can accumulate something else for 2015. That's kind of what I look at with the St. Louis Rams is they have to utilize those draft picks as currency. And to me, if I were them, I would be open to not only dealing back once from pick number 2, but maybe more than once, or trading back from number 2 maybe to a number 6, and then trading back again from a number 13 to maybe somewhere in the late teens and early 20s. It's one of these ultimate debates I think that the war room of the St. Louis Rams is going to have, the organization is going to have, Les Snead and Jeff Fisher. It's going to be, are they all in now? Or are they going to want to be kind of like the New England Patriots were for many years, where they always found a way to continue to accumulate additional picks for future drafts and it continued to make them power players year in and year out? That's the question. Because with this being a really good draft, you could make an argument that the St. Louis Rams need to be all in right here, right now in 2014. They need to see screw it all, and they need to sit there and get the best available impact player they can with the second overall pick, whether that's a Jadeveon Clowney for them, a Khalil Mack for them, a Greg Robinson for them, a Sammy Watkins for them. You could also sit there and say maybe they need to bump up from pick number 13 to trade up somewhere into the first 7 or 8 picks, which I've done maybe in my last 2 mock drafts, having them take somebody like a Mike Evans. When you look at the draft strategy too, in terms of the players that they take, I think it's going to be critical if they believe, for whatever reason, that Sam Bradford could still be a franchise quarterback in the NFL, and I don't get why they would. This is a quarterback from a previous failed regime. Why would you continue to put your eggs in his basket? But if they do, they must find a way to give him more help and give him more pieces, more ammunition on the offensive side of the football. If you don't think Sam Bradford is going to be the guy, which is something, again, I think this organization needs to come to realize, if they don't take a quarterback here early in the 2014 NFL draft, will they potentially be setting themselves up for failure long term? Will they be sitting there and saying to themselves, you know what, God, we got this incredible, awesome team on both sides of the football, but we don't have the leader. We don't have the quarterback that could put everything together and make everything work and truly make us a Super Bowl championship contending team. So as great of a position of power that the St. Louis Rams are in, and don't get me wrong, they are in again in 2014, I think there are a lot more questions than people might want to think. And there are a lot more uncertainties for this organization in terms of maybe what is best for them. Do they go all in now? Do they like I said, stay at 2? Do they trade up from 13? Do they trade back up into the bottom portion of round 1 and get 3 first-round picks in a deep and talented draft class? Do they move back a bunch of times and sit there and use these draft picks as currency to accumulate additional lower picks for this year and for future years? All of these are going to be questions that will eventually be answered. In terms of team needs for this organization, they need help on that offensive line, both at the tackle position and at the guard position. They could use a big physical red zone target type of wide receiver. They could use help on defense in the secondary, both at corner and at safety. If you want to sit there and say your corners are going to be Jenkins and maybe a Trumaine Johnson, well, you could still use some competition. In worst case scenario, you could use a good nickel corner. They desperately need help at the safety position, excuse me. That's the most glaring weakness on the defensive side of the football for that team. Their front four is pretty stout. Their linebacking core is pretty good in terms of their weak side linebacker Ogletree and their middle linebacker Laurinaitis. Now they could use a pass rushing outside linebacker. That's something they could use an upgrade over a Jolan Dunbar. But again, this is a team that has some talent on both sides of the football. But they need to do something to kind of, if you know what I mean, bring it together. And I can't wait to see what the St. Louis Rams do in the 2014 NFL draft. Because are they going to go all in now? Or are they going to kind of stay the course? And they're going to want to be power players in 2015 and beyond. And whatever they do, are they going to find impact players that can potentially help put them over the hump and make them a playoff contending team in 2014? Only time will tell. Only time will tell.